They say the devil is in the details, and that especially rings true when it comes to model making. The more elements or details that you can add to a model, the more interesting, realistic, or believable it becomes. And this is why I really wanted to push my model making skills to the limit and step up the level of detail on my airlock door diorama. Can I make this model look believable and realistic? Stay tuned and find out. Greetings fellow Earthlings and welcome back to Darlingbrough Sci-Fi Builds. Since starting my airlock door diorama, I have been on YouTube watching a lot of other model making channels, and during this research I have come to a realization. The difference between a good model and a great model is the attention to detail that's put into it. As happy as I was with the progress of my airlock door diorama, I really wanted to make it stand out in terms of realism. I started to raid my collection of greeblies for extra components to install on the model. As I was searching through my collection of greeblies, I found an ideal piece which was taken from a printer that I'd recently disassembled. After removing the electronic ink cartridge reader chips from the piece, I was left with a very interesting structure I felt would work perfectly as some kind of mechanism on the side of the airlock door which could be used to open and close the door. Utilising the existing shape of the piece, I inserted a thin straw and a 1mm styrene rod to create pipework running within the door mechanism before putting it in place on the door frame. I chose another part of the printer which matched up perfectly to be attached at the side of the airlock door as well. However, I did need to remove some of the details I'd originally attached to the panels surrounding the airlock door initially. Now, building a model can be very organic. If you choose to attach certain elements to a model, you may come to change your mind later on in the process. Just remember that nothing is ever really set in stone, even if it's glued down, even if it's painted. Don't be afraid to make changes to a model if you feel that the changes will improve the model. You can always make changes until you decide that it's complete. After trimming the plastic printer pieces, I then attached them to the frame of the airlock, and I must admit, this worked a lot better than I had originally planned. With the piece I was planning on attaching to the side, I realised that the printer manufacturer logo, as well as some information about the part, was very clearly visible. Rather than trying to sand it all down and get rid of it, I decided to simply cover these details up with some plastic bendy straws. After carefully measuring the space, I trimmed the straws back before trying to stick them in place using some CA glue, or super glue as it's otherwise known. Unfortunately, the super glue didn't work, even when I used some activator. So I decided to use another model making tip and added some baking powder to the wet CA glue, which created a solid connection. I then attached the side piece of the door mechanism to the piece on the side frame and stuck it all down. before attaching some twisted wires to give additional details. On the original door, I had actually attached some zip ties to make it look like some sort of runners or tracks. I decided that this would work really well if there was some kind of roller mechanism or wheel to control this and make the door appear as if it will open or close. Using some small rollers, again from the recently disassembled printer, I felt that this worked incredibly well. As I was working on the model, I envisioned a big powerful motor turning these wheels and opening this door. Whilst having a look through my greeblies, I came across these clips, again taken from the printer, and I felt that these would make a perfect motor for the wheels. I used my rotary tool to carve a small channel where the wheel would go, and then I attached them to the model. I feel that these pieces are absolutely ideal as motors for the wheels. I also felt that the other side of the airlock door needed something to balance up the mechanism as well, and I attached further pieces from the printer. I felt that all of these pieces added to the detail of the door and made it look more realistic and more functional. I then spent some time just adding extra details onto the airlock door. I wanted to make it look as mechanical and industrial as possible, so I added pipes and tubing to the airlock door and surrounding areas. I also felt that the airlock door should have some kind of manual override as well, so I created a manual override handle which I again attached to the door using some very thin CA glue. As I previously mentioned, sometimes you make a decision to change parts of a model, and I really felt that the piece at the bottom just wasn't particularly interesting, and it just looked like it was attached for the sake of being attached. I removed it and changed it for a small panel, and then added lots and lots of thin styrene rods. I also added a few extra details to the airlock door and the surrounding walls as well, including pipe work, tubing and some wires. In addition, I created some extra panels using some keyboard keys I obtained from an old broken laptop which I disassembled. Now obviously through this video I have mentioned that I have hacked apart an old printer and I have stripped down a laptop to obtain some greeblies for this project. If you are interested in seeing how I obtained those greeblies, or if you want me to strip down any other devices for greeblies, then please leave a comment with what you want to see. For example,
Grasshopper Disassemble.
Cheers Johnny. And I will make a video in the future. I then turned my attention to the additional units surrounding the airlock, for example the communications device and also the oxygen generator. Whilst I was more or less happy with them, I wanted to add extra details just to bring the model to life. I felt that the communications device needed a few small details added to it to finish it off, and I also added a few extra details to the oxygen regeneration unit as well. After applying all of the details to the airlock door and the additional units, I then turned my attention to the extractor fans that featured above the airlock door itself, and I'll be honest, I really wasn't particularly happy with how they looked. I decided that rather than trying to amend the designs I already had, I was going to create something completely different. And if you want to know exactly what I did with those fans, you're going to have to look out for the next video. Make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on me losing my virginity. Ooh.